You know what the scariest moment of my life was? It wasn't the heart surgery. It wasn't burying my wife. It wasn't even turning 80. The scariest moment of my life was sitting in my daughter's kitchen in Columbus, Ohio, while she slid a glossy brochure across the table. Autumn Meadows Senior Living. There was a photo of an old woman on the cover, smiling in a wheelchair, holding a cup of tea like it was the happiest day of her life. And my daughter, God love her, she looked at me with those soft, concerned eyes and said, "Dad, we think it might be time." I'm 81 years old. My name is Gerald Fisk, and I'm sitting here talking to you from a balcony in Chiang Mai, Thailand, where I pay $540 a month for a one-bedroom apartment with a view of Doi Suthep Mountain. I've got a woman named Nok who comes 3 times a week to cook and clean for about $12 a visit. I walk to the morning market every day. I eat mango sticky rice that costs less than $1, and I have never, not once, felt more alive than I do right now. But I almost ended up in that nursing home. I was this close. And if you're watching this, if you're in your 60s, your 70s, your 80s, or if you've got a parent that someone's trying to put away in one of those places, I need you to hear what I'm about to tell you, because there is another way, and nobody talks about it. Let me back up a little. Let me tell you how I got here. I was born in 1943 in Dayton, Ohio. Grew up in a brick house on Catalpa Drive with 3 brothers and a sister. My father worked at a General Motors plant. My mother was a homemaker who could stretch a pound of ground beef into 3 meals. We weren't poor, but we weren't comfortable either. I joined the Army at 18, because that's what you did if you didn't have money for college. Served 2 years in Germany. Never saw combat, just a lot of paperwork and cold barracks. Came home, used the GI Bill, got a degree in mechanical engineering from the University of Dayton. Married my wife Connie in 1967. We had 2 kids, my daughter Karen, born in 69, and my son Mitchell, born in 72. I worked for 34 years at a manufacturing company in Springfield, Ohio. Retired at 62 with a pension and Social Security. Connie and I had a nice little life. We had a 3-bedroom ranch house on Willowbrook Lane. We'd go to Florida every February. We'd host Thanksgiving. Normal stuff. American stuff. Connie got diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's when she was 68. That was 2004. For the next 7 years, I watched the woman I loved disappear a little more every day. By the end, she didn't know who I was. She didn't know who she was. She passed in 2011, at 75. And I'll tell you something about those last years. The home health aides, the specialists, the medications, the equipment. It drained us. Not completely, but close. By the time Connie died, a good chunk of our savings was gone. What I had left was the house, my pension, Social Security, and about $90,000 in savings. That's it. That was supposed to last me the rest of my life. Now here's the thing about getting old in America that nobody prepares you for. Everything costs more than you think, and it costs more every single year. My property taxes went up. My insurance went up. The grocery bill went up. I was spending close to $2,400 a month just to exist in that house. Not living, existing, paying bills, heating an empty house in the winter. Sitting in a recliner watching cable news until my brain went numb. After Connie died, I went through about 3 years of what I'd call a fog. I didn't do much. I didn't go anywhere. My daughter Karen lived about 40 minutes away in Columbus with her husband, and they'd come by on weekends. Mitchell was out in Portland, Oregon. We talked on the phone every couple weeks. But mostly I was alone, And when you're alone in your 70s in a quiet house in Springfield, Ohio, time does something strange. It doesn't speed up or slow down. It just sort of stops mattering. Tuesday feels like Saturday feels like Thursday. You eat when you're hungry. You sleep when you're tired. You watch TV until your eyes blur. Then I fell. It was February 2018. I was 75. I went out to get the mail. It had snowed the night before, and the walkway was icy. My feet went out from under me, and I landed hard on my left hip. I laid there in the snow for about 20 minutes before my neighbor, a younger guy named Dean, happened to pull into his driveway and saw me. He called 911. I'd fractured my hip, surgery, 6 weeks of rehab. And that's when the conversation started. Karen came to the rehab facility every day. She was wonderful. I don't want to paint her as a villain because she's not. She's a good daughter who was genuinely scared. But she started talking about options. She'd done research. She'd visited places. She had spreadsheets. And one afternoon she sat down next to my hospital bed and said, "Dad, we need to talk about what comes next." What came next, according to Karen, was assisted living. She'd found a place in Dublin, Ohio, a suburb of Columbus, close to her house. It looked nice in the brochure. Private rooms, a dining hall, activities, a nurse on staff 24/7. The cost, $4,200 a month, and that was the base rate. Anything extra, medication management, physical therapy, specialized care, that was all additional. We're talking $5,000–6,000 a month easily. I did the math in my head while she was talking. At $5,000 a month, my savings would last about 18 months. After that, it'd be my pension and Social Security, which together came to about $2,200 a month. That wouldn't even cover half the bill. So what then? Medicaid? A shared room in a facility that smells like disinfectant and despair? I'd seen those places. I'd visited Connie's mother in one before she died. Fluorescent lights, linoleum floors, old people parked in wheelchairs along hallways, staring at nothing. The TV blaring game shows that nobody was watching. I looked at Karen and I said no. She thought I was being stubborn. Maybe I was. But something in my gut, something deep and primal, told me that if I walked through those doors, I would never walk out. Not because of the care, not because of the staff, but because something inside me would give up. I'd seen it happen. You go in, and the world shrinks to the size of a room, your bed, your window. And one day you just stop. I told Karen I needed time to think. She wasn't happy about it. Her husband, Rick, pulled me aside at one point and said, very diplomatically, that they couldn't have me living with them. They had 2 teenagers, a dog, jobs. There wasn't room, physically or emotionally. I understood. I didn't want that either. I didn't want to be anybody's burden. That word, burden, it's the word that keeps every aging person up at night. You spend your whole life being useful, being needed, being the one who fixes things and provides things and carries things. And then one day you realize you're the thing that needs carrying. So there I was, 75 years old, fractured hip, mostly healed, a house I couldn't really afford and was too big for, a daughter who wanted to put me in a home, a son 3,000 miles away, and about $87,000 to my name. And then something happened that changed everything. It started with a magazine. I was sitting in the waiting room at my physical therapist's office, a place on South Limestone Street in Springfield, and there was a copy of International Living on the table. I'd never heard of it. I picked it up because the cover had a photo of a beach, and the headline said something like, "Retire overseas on $1,500 a month." I almost put it back down. I figured it was one of those fantasy things, like those ads for timeshares. But I had 20 minutes to kill, so I flipped through it. There was an article about Thailand, about a city called Chiang Mai, and the things they were describing, the cost of living, the weather, the food, the healthcare. It sounded too good to be true. A nice apartment for $500, a full meal for $2 or $3, a doctor's visit for $15, a full dental cleaning for $25. I read the article twice, and then I tore the page out and put it in my jacket pocket. I'm not proud of that. It was a waiting room magazine, but I did it. That night, I went home and I got on my computer. Now, I'm not a technology person. I've got an old Dell laptop that takes about 4 minutes to boot up, and I mostly use it for email and checking the weather. But I typed "retiring in Chiang Mai, Thailand" into Google, and what came back was like opening a door into another world. There were blogs. There were forums, there were YouTube videos of people, regular people, not rich people, living in Thailand on $1,500, $2,000 a month. Retirees, Americans, Brits, Australians, people my age, some older, walking through night markets, sitting by swimming pools, eating at little street stalls. And they looked happy. Not brochure happy, not Autumn Meadows happy, actually, genuinely happy. I stayed up until 2 in the morning reading. I don't think I'd stayed up past 11 in years. Over the next few weeks, I became obsessed. I joined forums. I read everything I could find. I learned about the Thai retirement visa. You need to be over 50, show 65,000 baht in monthly income, which worked out to about $1,800 at the time, or have 800,000 baht in a Thai bank account, which was about $22,000. My pension and Social Security together were about $2,200 a month. I qualified. I actually qualified. But here's the thing. Knowing you can do something and actually doing it are two very different things. I was 75 years old. I'd never been to Asia. I'd barely been outside the Midwest except for that stint in Germany 50-some years ago and our Florida trips. The idea of moving to Thailand was absolutely insane. Every rational part of my brain was screaming at me that this was crazy, that I was too old, that I didn't speak the language, that I'd be alone on the other side of the world. But then I'd think about Autumn Meadows. I'd think about that brochure, that woman in the wheelchair with the tea, and I'd think, which is crazier, moving to a country where my money would last and I could actually live, or sitting in a facility in Dublin, Ohio, watching my savings evaporate at $5,000 a month while I waited to die. I didn't tell Karen right away. I knew how she'd react. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in years. I booked a trip. I went online, found a flight from Dayton to Chiang Mai with 2 connections through Chicago and then Tokyo for about $800 round trip. I called my doctor, made sure I was cleared to fly. He looked at me like I'd lost my mind, but he cleared me. And in April of 2018, 3 months after breaking my hip, I got on an airplane to Thailand. Alone, 75 years old, with a suitcase, a torn-out magazine page, and a list of apartments I'd found on a website called Thai Visa Forum. The flight was brutal, I won't lie. 17 hours of total travel time. My hip ached. The seats were small. I couldn't sleep. By the time I landed in Chiang Mai, I was exhausted, disoriented, and seriously questioning every decision I'd ever made. I walked through the airport, which is small, clean, modern, nothing like I expected, and stepped outside into the heat. It was about 90 degrees. The air smelled like jasmine and exhaust. There were these little red trucks everywhere. They call them songthaus, and taxi drivers calling out to me. And I just stood there on the curb, sweating, holding my suitcase, thinking, what have I done? I'd booked a guest house for the first week, a place called Ban Raya Guest House near the old city, off Ratchadamnuen Road. It cost me about $28 a night, which I thought was expensive until I saw the room. Air-conditioned, clean, a real bed, a little balcony overlooking a garden. There was a temple across the street, and at 6 in the morning, monks in orange robes would walk past in a single-file line, collecting food from people kneeling on the sidewalk. I'd never seen anything like it. That first morning, I walked out of the guest house and just started wandering. I didn't have a plan. I walked along the moat. The old city of Chiang Mai is surrounded by a moat and remnants of an ancient wall. And I found a little market. Vendors selling fruit I'd never seen before. Mangosteen, rambutan, dragon fruit. There was a woman grilling pork skewers over charcoal, and the smoke smelled incredible. I pointed at the skewers, held up 2 fingers, and she smiled and handed them to me. 20 baht, about 60 cents. I sat on a bench by the moat, eating these pork skewers at 7 in the morning, watching monks and motorbikes and stray dogs go by, and something shifted inside me. I can't explain it exactly. It was like a knot I'd been carrying in my chest for years, just loosened a little. The air was warm, the food was good, nobody was looking at me with pity or concern, nobody was sliding brochures across a table. I was just a man on a bench, eating breakfast, watching the world go by. And for the first time in a very long time, I didn't feel old. I felt alive. That first week in Chiang Mai, I must have walked 6 or 7 miles a day. Now, remember, this is a man who'd broken his hip 3 months earlier. Back in Springfield, I could barely make it to the mailbox without getting winded. But something about being here, the warmth, the flat sidewalks, the fact that there was always something interesting to look at around the next corner, it just pulled me forward. I didn't think about my hip. I didn't think about my age. I just walked. I explored the old city first. It's roughly a square mile inside the moat, packed with temples and guest houses and little restaurants. Wat Chedi Luang, this massive ancient temple with a crumbling brick pagoda that's been standing since the 14th century. I stood at the base of it and looked up, and I thought about how this thing was built 400 years before America even existed. It puts your problems in perspective, I'll tell you that. I found a coffee shop on Ratchamanka Road, a tiny place called Wrist 82, which apparently won some international barista award. I don't know anything about fancy coffee, but they made me an Americano for about $2, and I sat there watching the street for an hour. Nobody rushed me. Nobody gave me a dirty look for taking up a table. Time just moved differently here. By the 3rd day, I started looking at apartments. I'd printed out a list from that forum. About 8 places, all in the Nimmenhamen area, or near the old city. Nimmenhamen, or Nimmen as everyone calls it, is this trendy neighborhood with cafes and boutiques and co-working spaces. It's popular with younger expats and digital nomad types, so the apartments there were nicer but a bit pricier, maybe $600 to $800 a month. I couldn't justify that on my budget. But then I found a place in the Santitham neighborhood, about a 10-minute walk north of the old city. It was a building called Ban Suan Apartments, nothing fancy but clean and well-maintained, a 1-bedroom unit on the 3rd floor, fully furnished, with air conditioning, a small kitchen, a balcony that faced west toward Doi Suthep Mountain. The rent was 16,000 baht a month. At the exchange rate at the time, that was about $480. They wanted a 2-month deposit. The landlord was a Thai woman in her 50s named Kun Prani, who spoke decent English and seemed amused by this tall, gray-haired American standing in her lobby asking about long-term rentals. I told her I was just visiting, that I was looking but hadn't decided. She nodded and said, "You come back when you're ready. No pressure, no sales pitch, just patience." I spent the rest of that first trip going to hospitals. That sounds morbid, but it was the most important research I did. When you're 75 with a rebuilt hip and a family history of heart disease, healthcare isn't a luxury. It's the whole ball game. I visited 3 hospitals. The first was Chiang Mai Ram, a mid-sized private hospital near the old city. Clean, modern, English-speaking staff. I walked into the general practice department without an appointment, told them I wanted a checkup, and 30 minutes later I was sitting in front of a doctor, a young Thai woman, educated in the UK, who gave me a thorough physical exam, checked my blood pressure, ordered blood work, and charged me 1,600 baht, about $45, total. No insurance, no copay confusion, no fighting with a billing department. $45. The second hospital was Maharaj Nakorn Chiang Mai, the government hospital affiliated with the university. It was bigger, busier, and cheaper, but also more chaotic. Longer waits, less English. I figured that was more of a backup option. The third was the one that really sold me. Bangkok Hospital Chiang Mai. This place looked like a hotel. Marble lobby, piano music, staff in crisp uniforms. They had an international patient department with coordinators who spoke English, Japanese, Chinese, you name it. I got a cardiac screening there, EKG, echocardiogram, blood panel, chest x-ray, consultation with a cardiologist. The total bill was about 11,000 baht, roughly $310. Back in the States, that same workup would have cost me thousands, even with Medicare. And the care was good. I mean genuinely good. The cardiologist spent 40 minutes with me. 40 minutes. When's the last time an American doctor spent 40 minutes with you? He went through my history, my medications, my lifestyle. He adjusted one of my prescriptions and told me to come back in 3 months. He shook my hand when I left. It felt like being treated as a human being, not a file number. By the end of that first week, I knew. I just knew. This was possible. This wasn't a fantasy from a magazine. This was a real place where real people lived real lives, and I could be one of them. I flew home to Springfield and started making plans. Now, telling Karen, that was the hard part. I invited her and Rick over for dinner. I made spaghetti, which is about the only thing I can cook competently. And over dinner, I told them. I said I'd been to Thailand. I said I was thinking about moving there. The silence that followed was the longest 30 seconds of my life. Karen's first reaction was anger. Not screaming anger. Karen's not like that. But the quiet, controlled kind that's almost worse. She said I was being irresponsible. She said I was running away. She said what would happen if I had a medical emergency on the other side of the world. She said, "Dad, you're 75 years old. You can't just move to Thailand." And I said, "Karen, you wanted to put me in a nursing home. The cheapest decent option was $4,000 a month. My total income is $2,200. You tell me, what's the responsible option here?" Rick, to his credit, actually looked interested. He asked practical questions. What about Medicare? I told him Medicare doesn't work overseas, but that I'd done the math. Even paying out of pocket for everything in Thailand, I'd spend less on healthcare in a year than I would in 3 months in the US system. What about the language barrier? I told him about the hospitals, the English-speaking doctors. What about being alone? I told him about the expat community I'd read about. Thousands of retirees, Americans, Europeans, Australians, all living in Chiang Mai. Karen cried at the end of dinner. She said she felt like she was losing her father, That hit me hard. I held her hand and told her she wasn't losing me. She was watching me choose to live instead of choosing to wait. I told her I'd call every week. I'd get a Thai phone plan with international calling. I'd learn to use that video thing, FaceTime. And I'd come back to visit once a year. Mitchell was easier. When I called him in Portland and told him, he laughed and said, "Go for it, Dad. Life's too short." That boy was always the adventurous one. Over the next 4 months, I did what needed to be done. I sold the house. That was emotional. 31 years of memories in that place. Connie's garden, the marks on the doorframe where we'd measured the kid's height, the basement where Mitchell had his first band practice. But I sold it, got $138,000 for it, which was fair for Springfield at the time. I put that money in a savings account as my safety net. I sold or gave away most of our furniture. Karen took Connie's china and the photo albums. Mitchell got my tools. I donated the rest. I packed 2 suitcases, clothes, medications, a few books, and 1 framed photo of Connie and me from our wedding day in 1967. I applied for the Thai retirement visa through the consulate in Chicago. The process was straightforward, if a little bureaucratic. I needed my passport, proof of income, a criminal background check, and a medical certificate. Took about 3 weeks to process. On September 14, 2018, I flew out of Dayton International Airport with 2 suitcases, a one-way ticket, and the kind of terror that feels exactly like excitement when you're not sure which one it is. That was 6 years ago. And I'm going to tell you what my life has looked like since then, because I think it matters. I think there are people watching this who need to hear it. My daily routine in Chiang Mai goes something like this. I wake up around 6, sometimes earlier. The roosters handle that. Yes, there are roosters in the city, you just accept it. I make coffee in my little kitchen. I've got a French press, and I buy beans from a local roaster near Siri Mankalajan Road, 300 grams for about $4, and it's better than anything I ever bought at Kroger. Around 7, I walk to the morning market. My usual one is Som Phet Market, inside the old city. It's not a tourist market, it's where local Thai people buy their groceries. There are these little tables set up where old women sell curry pastes they've made that morning, and there's a noodle stall right at the entrance that does this pork noodle soup, Kwai Teo Mu, that costs 35 baht, about $1. It's the best soup I've ever had, and I've been eating it 3 or 4 mornings a week for 6 years. After breakfast I walk, sometimes around the moat, which is about a 1.5-mile loop, sometimes up to Kad Suan K, the old shopping mall, just for the air conditioning. Sometimes I walk all the way to the Ping River, which takes about 40 minutes each way. I walk more here than I ever did in my life. My hip? It's fine. Better than fine. A doctor here told me the warm climate helps with joint inflammation. I don't know if that's medically proven, but I know my hip doesn't ache like it did in Ohio winters. 3 times a week, Nok comes over. Her full name is Nok Sawan, but everyone calls her Nok. She's in her 40s, tiny, maybe 5 feet tall, and she cooks Thai food like you wouldn't believe. She shops, she cooks, she cleans, and she does my laundry. I pay her 400 baht per visit, about $12. She makes pad kra pao, which is this stir-fried basil and pork dish over rice with a fried egg on top. She makes tom kha gai, a coconut chicken soup that I'm convinced could cure anything. She makes som tam, a papaya salad that's so spicy it once made my ears ring, and she laughed about it for 20 minutes. Is it strange having someone do those things for you? At first, yes. I felt guilty about it. I'm a Midwestern man who was raised to do things himself. But here, it's normal. It's a cultural thing. it provides employment, and frankly, Knox cooking is keeping me healthier than anything I'd make for myself. Left to my own devices, I'd eat cereal and canned soup. In the afternoons, I usually go to one of two places. There's a coffee shop on Niminsolwai 9 where a group of us meet, us being the expat crew, a loose collection of retirees and long-term residents who found each other through the years. There's Vic, a 73-year-old retired plumber from Manchester, England, who's been in Chiang Mai for 11 years and knows every street vendor in the city. There's Hank, a 68-year-old former high school teacher from Sacramento who came for a 2-week vacation in 2015 and never left. There's Arlene, a 79-year-old widow from Melbourne, Australia, who walks with a cane and has sharper wit than anyone half her age. And there are others who come and go, a revolving cast of people passing through or settling in, all with their own stories about why they left and what they found. We sit, we drink coffee, we talk. Sometimes we argue about politics. Sometimes we swap tips about visa renewals or which pharmacy has the best prices on medications. Sometimes we just sit and watch the street. It sounds simple because it is simple, but it's community, it's belonging. And when you're 81 years old, that matters more than anything. Let me talk about money because I know that's what a lot of you are wondering about. My monthly budget in Chiang Mai breaks down roughly like this. Rent, 16,000 baht, about $540 at current exchange rates, though it fluctuates. Nok, cooking and cleaning, about 5,000 baht a month, which is around $140. Food when I eat out, and I eat out a lot, this is Thailand, maybe 3,000 to 4,000 baht, so around $100. Utilities, electric, water, internet, about 3,000 baht, roughly $85. Electric is the big one because of air conditioning. My phone plan, about 700 baht, or $20. Unlimited data, calls, and I can FaceTime Karen every Sunday. Transportation, mostly Songthaos and the occasional Grab taxi, maybe 1,000 baht, about $30. Healthcare, this varies, but on average, including prescriptions, checkups, and the occasional specialist visit, about 3,000 to 4,000 baht a month, roughly $100. Miscellaneous, toiletries, new sandals when mine break, the occasional book, a beer with Vic and Hank, another 2,000 baht, about $60. Total, roughly 35,000 to 38,000 baht a month. That's about $1,000 to $1,100. My income is $2,200 a month. That means I'm saving over $1,000 every month. Saving, at 81. After already putting over $100,000 in the bank from the house sale. Do you know how that feels? It feels like the opposite of drowning. It feels like the financial anxiety that had been sitting on my chest for a decade just evaporated. Compare that to what I was looking at in Ohio, $2,400 a month just for the basics of living alone in a house, or 4,000 to 6,000 a month for assisted living, or, God forbid, a Medicaid nursing home, where I'd share a room with a stranger and eat institutional mashed potatoes until my number came up. Here, I live like a king, not a flashy king, not a luxury king, but a comfortable, dignified, independent king who eats well, sleeps well, sees a doctor whenever he wants, and doesn't have to worry about running out of money before he runs out of time. That fear, running out of money before you run out of time, is the thing that haunts every retiree in America. And it's the thing that Thailand took away from me. Now, I'd be lying to you if I said everything about living here is perfect. It's not. And I think it's important to be honest about that, because too many people sell this dream without mentioning the rough edges. The heat is real. I came from Ohio, where summer means 85 degrees and some humidity. Here, from March through May, it's regularly 100 degrees with crushing humidity. They call it the hot season, and it's accurately named. I stay inside during the middle of the day during those months. Air conditioning isn't a luxury, it's survival. And the electric bill reflects that. It can jump from 1,500 baht to 4,000 or 5,000 baht in the hot months. Then there's the burning season. From about February through April, farmers in northern Thailand and neighboring Myanmar and Laos burn their fields, and the smoke settles over Chiang Mai like a blanket. The air quality gets terrible. Some years are worse than others, but in a bad year, the AQI, the air quality index, can hit 300, 400, even higher. For context, anything over 150 is considered unhealthy. For an 81-year-old with a history of heart issues, that's no joke. I bought an air purifier for my apartment, a good one, a Blue Air, and I keep the windows sealed during burning season. Some expats leave during those months. They go to the coast, or to the islands, or across to Vietnam. I've done that once. Spent March in Da Nang, Vietnam, which was beautiful and cheap and had clean air. But mostly I hunker down, stay inside, and wait it out. The language barrier is another thing. I've learned some Thai over the years, enough to order food, give directions to a taxi driver, say please and thank you, tell Nok that her green curry is the best I've ever had. But real conversations, discussing a medical issue in detail, handling a legal or financial matter, that's still English only for me. And while English is widely spoken in Chiang Mai, especially in hospitals, at the immigration office, and in tourist areas, there are moments when you feel the gap. When the plumber comes to fix a leaky faucet and doesn't speak a word of English, you end up doing a lot of pointing and miming. It's humbling, and sometimes it's lonely. Speaking of lonely, let me address that directly, because it's the thing Karen worries about most. Yes, there are times when I feel isolated. Saturday nights sometimes. Holidays, definitely. Thai New Year, Songkran, is exciting. Everyone's throwing water in the streets and laughing, but it's not my holiday. It's not Thanksgiving, with my family around a table. Christmas here is a commercial decoration in the shopping mall, not a real celebration. I miss the rhythm of American holidays. I miss Karen's pumpkin pie. I miss the sound of my grandkids arguing over who gets to sit where. But here's what I've learned. Loneliness isn't about geography. I was lonelier in Springfield, Ohio, sitting alone in a 3-bedroom house with nobody to talk to, than I've ever been in Chiang Mai. At least here I have my coffee group. I have Nok, who's become something like family. I have the morning market vendors who recognize me and smile when I walk up. I have a Thai neighbor named Kun Somchai who's about my age, and who, despite speaking almost no English, somehow communicates perfectly through gestures and patience and the occasional shared bottle of Singha beer on his porch. Community isn't just about shared language or shared nationality. It's about showing up, being present, saying good morning to the same people every day until those greetings become the threads that hold your life together. I also want to tell you about something that happened 2 years ago that tested everything. In 2022, I had a heart episode. I was walking near the Tha Phai Gate, the old eastern gate of the city, and I felt a tightness in my chest, a squeezing sensation, and my left arm went tingly. I knew what it was. I'd been warned about it. I managed to flag down a songthae, and I told the driver, in very broken Thai, "Hospital, fast." He looked at my face and he understood. He took me to Bangkok Hospital Chiang Mai in about 8 minutes. They had me in the cardiac unit within 15 minutes of arrival. They ran an EKG, drew blood, started an IV. The cardiologist, Dr. Peachett, the same one I'd been seeing for years, was there within the hour. It turned out to be a minor cardiac event, not a full heart attack, but a warning. They kept me overnight, monitored me, adjusted my medications, and sent me home the next day with a follow-up plan. The total cost for the emergency visit, overnight stay, all the tests, the medications, and the follow-up appointment, about 45,000 baht, roughly $1,250, out of pocket, no insurance. When I told Karen about it, after the fact, because I wasn't about to call her while it was happening and give her a heart attack of her own, she was understandably upset. She said, "See, Dad, this is exactly what I was worried about." And I said, "Karen, I had a cardiac event, and I was in a state-of-the-art cardiac unit in 15 minutes, treated by a doctor who knows my history, and the whole thing cost less than your monthly car payment. What exactly should I have done differently?" She didn't have an answer for that. The truth is, bad things can happen anywhere. You can have a heart attack in Springfield, Ohio, just as easily as in Chiang Mai. The question isn't whether something will go wrong. Something always goes wrong. That's life. The question is whether you spend the time between the bad things actually living or just sitting in a chair waiting for them. I chose living. And every morning when I wake up and see that mountain out my window with the temple glinting on top of it in the early light, I know I made the right choice. Let me tell you about Vietnam for a moment, because I mentioned Da Nang earlier, and I think it's worth talking about as another option. I spent that month in Da Nang during the burning season of 2023, and I was genuinely impressed. Vietnam is cheaper than Thailand in some ways, food especially. I was eating bowls of pho for about $1.25. I rented a furnished studio apartment near Mai Khe Beach for $350 a month. The healthcare system is more basic than Thailand's, but there are good international hospitals in the bigger cities, Da Nang, Ho Chi Minh City, Hanoi. The visa situation is a bit more complicated than Thailand. They don't have a straightforward retirement visa like Thailand does, so most retirees use tourist visas and do border runs or get extensions. That's a hassle, but the country itself is beautiful. The people are incredibly kind, and the cost of living is even lower than Chiang Mai. I met a guy there, Earl, 77 years old, from Biloxi, Mississippi, who'd been living in Da Nang for 4 years. He paid $320 a month for a one-bedroom apartment 3 blocks from the beach. His total monthly expenses were about $700. $700. He told me he'd been looking at assisted living in Mississippi before he found Vietnam, and the cheapest option was $3,800 a month for a shared room. He looked me in the eye and said, "Gerald, I swim in the ocean every morning. I eat fresh seafood every night. My neighbors bring me fruit from their garden, and I haven't worried about money in 4 years. You tell me which is the nursing home and which is living." That stuck with me. You tell me which is the nursing home and which is living. Now, I want to take a brief pause here from the story because I want to be straight with you about something. Whether you're considering this for yourself or for someone you love, it's a big decision. And a lot of people have questions they don't even know how to ask yet, about visas, about costs, about healthcare, about the emotional side of leaving everything behind. Some of you are watching this thinking, "That sounds nice, but I wouldn't even know where to start." I get that. I was you 6 years ago. I came back to this life partly because I didn't overthink it and partly because I got lucky stumbling onto the right information. But not everyone has that luck. There's something I want to mention. There's a book that gets passed around in the expat circles here, and honestly, I wish I'd had it before I made the move. It doesn't have anything to do with me. I didn't write it. I'm an engineer, not a writer. But it's relevant. Listen, I don't normally promote things, but when something is genuinely useful, I think it's worth mentioning. But, no, all jokes aside, I genuinely think if you're sitting on the fence about any of this, or you're in the early stages of figuring it out, it could save you a lot of confusion. Check the description if you're curious. Now, back to what I was saying. Thailand versus Vietnam. Both are legitimate options. Both will give you a quality of life that's simply impossible on the same budget in the United States. But they're different places with different cultures and different challenges. Thailand has better infrastructure for retirees, established expat communities, easier visa processes, more English spoken. Vietnam is rougher around the edges but cheaper, and there's a raw energy to the place that some people love. I know retirees who've lived in both. Some prefer one, some the other. A few bounce between them depending on the season. The point isn't that one is better than the other. The point is that both exist as alternatives to what's waiting for most of us back home. I want to talk about what this experience has done to me mentally and emotionally, because I think that's the part that surprises people most. When I was in Springfield, after Connie died, I was depressed. I didn't call it that at the time. Men of my generation don't use that word easily, but that's what it was. I was depressed and I was resigned. I'd accepted that my life was essentially over, that I was just running out the clock. Every day was the same. Every meal was the same. Every conversation was the same. I was disappearing, just like Connie had disappeared, only slower and without the diagnosis. Moving here didn't cure depression. I'm not going to pretend it's that simple, but it gave me something that depression takes away, a reason to get up in the morning. Not a big dramatic reason, not a purpose with a capital P, just the simple knowledge that today would be different from yesterday, that I might try a new restaurant, or walk down a street I'd never been down, or have a conversation with someone I'd never met. Novelty. That's what it gave me. The gift of not knowing exactly what comes next. At 81, that's a miracle. Because what the nursing home model offers is the opposite. It offers predictability, routine, safety, and for some people, that's what they need. I won't judge anyone who genuinely needs that level of care. If you have advanced dementia, if you can't walk, if you need around-the-clock medical supervision, yes, a facility might be the right choice. I watched Connie go through that. I know there are situations where there's no alternative. But for the millions of older Americans who are physically capable, mentally sharp, and financially squeezed, people who are being pushed toward assisted living not because they need it, but because nobody can think of anything else, I'm here to tell you there's another door. And it leads to a balcony in Chiang Mai or a beach in Da Nang, or a mountain town in northern Vietnam, or a dozen other places around the world where your money goes further, your health gets better, and your life gets bigger instead of smaller. Karen came to visit me last year. First time she'd been to Thailand. She and Rick came for 10 days. I showed them everything, the market, the temples, the coffee shop, my apartment. I introduced them to Nok, who made them the best meal of their lives. I took them up to Doi Suthep Temple, and we stood at the railing looking out over the whole valley. The city spread out below us. The mountains blue in the distance. Karen was quiet for a long time, and then she said something I'll never forget. She said, "Dad, I'm sorry I tried to put you in a home." I put my arm around her and I said, "You didn't try to put me in a home, sweetheart. You tried to keep me safe. You just didn't know there was another way." She calls me every Sunday now, sometimes twice. And last month, she told me she and Rick have started looking into what it would cost to retire overseas themselves. They're only 55 and 57, so they've got time. But the seed is planted. I don't know how much time I have left. Nobody does, at any age. I could have 5 years or 15 years or 6 months. My heart is stable, but it's not perfect. My hip works, but it aches when it rains, which in the monsoon season is frequently. I take 7 medications every morning, which I buy at a pharmacy near Chang Fuak Gate for about a third of what they'd cost in the US. I see Dr. Pichit every 3 months. I walk every day. I eat well. I sleep with the window open in the cool season and listen to the temple bells at dawn. I'm not running from death. I'm just not sitting around waiting for it. If you're watching this and you're 70, 80, 90 years old, or if you're 40 and you're planning ahead, hear me on this. The system back home is designed to make you dependent. It's designed to move you from your house to assisted living to a nursing home to a hospital bed, each step costing more and giving you less. And at every step, someone is making money off your decline. The average cost of a nursing home in America is over $8,000 a month. $8,000. For a shared room with fluorescent lights and a TV bolted to the wall, or you can live, really live, in a place where the sun shines and the food is fresh and the people are kind, and your money lasts, and you wake up every morning knowing that today is yours. I'm 81 years old. I live in Chiang Mai, Thailand. I eat mango sticky rice on my balcony and watch the sunset turn Doi Suthep mountain gold. I have friends. I have purpose. I have dignity. And I have enough money to last longer than I will. Whatever you do, don't let them put you in a nursing home. Not if you have a choice. And you have a choice. You always have a choice. That's my story. Take it for what it's worth. And if it got you thinking about what's possible, if even a small part of you is wondering whether this could work, well, good. That's exactly how it started for me too. A torn-out magazine page and a question I was brave enough not to ignore.